Hi, this is Jen from Sewistry, and I'm going to give you a quick overview of sewing curves. Option one is to use pins. So we've got our two pieces here, and the first thing you're going to want to do with any method is to fold them in half and just make a little crease mark, or you can use a fabric safe marking pencil or something like that on each of the curved edges that are going to join together. And that way we can match up the centers. So we'll start by matching up at the center. Now these are solids, so I don't have to be as careful about right sides together, but definitely you want to have right sides together if you're using prints. So I put a pin in the middle, and then I go to one edge and line up the ends. Now I like to, at the ends, also put another pin perpendicular to the first to really hold it in place to get that angle just right when I go to sew. And so then you can see I go to the other end, lining up the short end of that outer piece with one of the straight edges of my inner curved piece. Get a couple pins in here. And then we'll just add a couple more, depending on your level of confidence, on how much you feel like pinning, and how big the curves are, just to hold things in place for when you go to head over to the sewing machine. And there we go. That one's ready to sew. The next option is to use glue. Now, I really like this little Sew Line glue pen. This is not an ad. But you could also use like an Elmer's glue stick. So again, the first thing you're going to do is find the midpoint of the curved edges. And I just do a little finger press. And again, if you're using prints, you'll want to do right sides together here. So now instead of using pins, I'm going to take my little glue stick, do just a small little line around the very outer edge of the larger curve piece. And then I put the outer curve piece right side down. And again, I start at the middle and the two edges, and then I work my way back in towards the center as far as securing that top piece down to the larger inner curve piece. And so you can see you kind of have to just gently, barely kind of stretch the outer curve template piece to fit against the inner curve. You don't want to really pull on it, but just sort of fiddle with it until you get it secured. And now that one is ready. Option three, if you're feeling pretty confident or you just do not feel like using anything else, is what I call the renegade method or freestyle. So again, you're still going to want to mark the midpoint of each piece. You're still going to want to make sure you've got right sides together. And even if I am not using pins or glue fully, I will still secure my two pieces together with just one pin in the center, just to make sure I'm staying on track. So now we'll head over to the machine, starting with the pins option. You want to make sure you do not sew over your pins. Obviously, that's where that perpendicular pin can come in handy to keep that first one down. And then you're going to just make your way around, going slowly, 1/4 inch seam allowance, doing your best to make sure that you don't get any creases sewn in on that top piece. So you can see I'm sort of fidgeting as I go through. I'll pause, lift up my presser foot a little bit, tuck away the excess outer curves. You can see I kind of fiddle it out of the way there. Just make your way all the way around. And sometimes you can use a little pin head to hold that last little bit in place. This is sped up some. And there you go. Option two, Using our glue basted piece, no pins to move out of the way. Still gonna go fairly slowly. This is a sped up video. Still using a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Still taking my time to move the little excess fabric out of the way so I hopefully don't get any creases sewn in. And there we go. Voila. Finally, renegade method. Now this takes a little bit more work, and I will say here I like to use my flanged 1/4 inch seam allowance foot. So get that first edge lined up, bump the edges right up against my flanged foot there, and then here, because I don't have anything securing those edges together like pins or glue, you have to go a little more slowly and just keep making sure that you've got both pieces of fabric lined up against that flanged foot or your 1/4 inch marking on your machine's throat plate. And so you just go a little, adjust, go a little, adjust. And there's always a point where you think, oh no, my ends aren't going to match up, but they always do. And there's usually a fair amount of seam allowance excess included in your template pieces, so it'll be okay. And you can see that edge is not perfect, but it's going to be fine once we get the blocks trimmed, which is the next step. So we'll press these open, and generally speaking, unless otherwise indicated, you'll want to press towards that outer piece. Now we'll move on to trimming these blocks. Supplies you'll want to have are a cutting mat of some sort, a rotary cutter, and you could use a square ruler, which is great, especially if it's the same size as your unfinished block, but I'll show you how to use a rectangular one as well. If you're going to use that square ruler, place your block to be trimmed on your cutting surface with the corner that is all inner curve on the upper right. Then place your square ruler down on top and begin to get it lined up so that you've got a 1/4 inch of outer template showing. And then we'll trim outside of that. So just double check. You've got a 1/4 inch of outer template on the bottom right and top left. And then I'll usually trim the right and top and then spin it around. Then you've got a nice clean corner to work with, so you can align your ruler with that bottom left edge. Double check we've still got a 1/4 inch of outer template showing, and then get the other two edges. We've got our lovely little block. Now if you want to use a rectangular ruler, if that's what you've got, set up your block to be trimmed so that the inner curve corner is at the bottom left. Get it nice and lined up. And now this is going to be a 4.5 inch unfinished block. So I'm just making sure that I've got 4.5 inches to work with. I know sort of my general target is going to be at that 8.5 inch mark. So if I bring my ruler to the 8.5 inch mark, then I can see I don't have quite a 1/4 inch beyond of the outer template showing. So I just scooch my ruler over because that 1/4 inch is what I'm really aiming for. And then I'm just going to trim off the excess there and then rotate 90 degrees. Once again, I'm going to first go with the 4.5 inches block size and see what that would look like, getting my ruler lined up with the 8.5 inch mark. And again, I can see I need to scooch it over just a little bit to get a 1/4 inch of outer template saved. Apologies for the glare there on the ruler. So now we just need to trim the other two sides, and those I can trim to exactly 4.5 inches on either side. And there you go.